Welcome to the video on intraday trading with narrow range candlesticks. In this series, we will be learning about intraday trading strategies and short-term trading in detail. In this part, I will be showing you how you can use narrow range candles in day trading and then combine this with VWAP indicator. Again, what I will explain here is extremely simple, and this is something you can learn today and start practicing it from Monday. So let's get started. So let us first understand narrow range candlesticks, and then we will discuss how to combine this with VWAP indicator. In this section, I will take up narrow range 4, that is NR4 candles, and in the next section, I will take up narrow range 7 candles. Now range in a candle means the distance between high and low, and in order to mark out NR4 and NR7 candles, we need to compare range of 4 and 7 candles respectively. In this chart, I have marked out all NR4 candles with these black circles that I have marked here. If you look at each candle that is marked, its range is the smallest among the last 4 candles. Take for instance this candle. Now range of this candle is the smallest among these 4 candles that you see. Therefore, this current range candle is categorized as narrow range 4 candle. Now I have done the markings here with a simple script that I have used on tradingview.com. Link to the same is given in the comment section below. Let us now look at narrow range 7 candles, also known as NR7. Like NR4, NR7 candles have the range smallest among the last 7 candles on the chart. In this chart, I have marked out NR7 candles in all these instances that you can see. Each candles, if you see, has the smallest range when compared with the last 7 candles. This includes the current candle as well. If you look at this candle here, range of this candle is the smallest among these 7 candles here. Now NR4 and NR7 are two of the most common narrow range candle filters that are used in day trading. It is not that you cannot use any other narrow range filters, and I would definitely recommend for you to experiment on these lines. I personally know a couple of really good traders who use a combination of NR7 and NR9 to trade in the stock market. So let me now introduce you to the concept of narrow range clusters. This is one concept you will read or hear almost nowhere. Therefore, do pay attention. Now, most traders in the market trade based on NR4, NR7 or NR9 candlesticks. While all these individually work very well, in my experience, clusters of narrow range candles work better. A narrow range cluster is when a group of NR4 or NR7 candles come together within a span of 7 to 9 candles. If you spot such clusters on this chart, always pay attention to these. These are one of the most important formations with respect to intraday trading. Now, most trading strategies revolve around single narrow range candles, and by the time you finish this video, you would realize how important narrow range clusters are in intraday trading. Let us now try and understand why narrow range clusters work. Now, narrow range candlesticks represent volatility contraction, and once these form on a chart, these represent a period where price does not expand much. And this is mainly due to the absence of strong players in the market. We all know that volatility is more cyclical than price, and hence once narrow range candles form on chart, price then expands in the direction of money flow. Now at times, you will find that expansion quickly reverses and heads in the opposite direction with strong momentum. I will explain in later slides how to deal with this in real time. The important thing, however, is to take note of whenever narrow range clusters form on a chart. When you spot clusters of narrow range candle, this represents volatility contraction over the last 7 to 9 candles. And this is naturally a much more stronger signal than individual narrow range candles. Expansions usually are more reliable and momentum oriented after the formations of clusters. And in intraday trading, if you see, this is what a trader hopes for. So let us now discuss the implication of narrow range clusters in intraday trading. Now, as an intraday trader, there are specific windows when you should be trading and when you should step aside and wait for right opportunities. Narrow range clusters help you identify such opportunities wherein odds of trade being successful certainly increases. Do note that whenever you spot narrow range clusters on the chart, implications of the same remain valid for the next 1 to 2 weeks. In this chart, there are 2 distinct narrow range clusters visible. First is in this region and second one is in this region. If you look at price movement post these clusters, you can clearly spot more wide range candles that are visible on the chart. Now, wide range candles are very important as far as intraday trading is concerned, as odds of profiting does increase with these. In this section, I will explain a few things about time frame combinations. This chart that you see is that of 60-minute time frame chart. On this chart, I have marked out narrow range candles in all these regions here. Right from the outset, it's very clear that on intraday time frame, there are too many narrow range candles that are visible. This actually reduces the effectiveness of narrow range candles as planning a trade gets difficult. Now, if you move even lower to 30-minute or 10-minute time frame chart, you will get too many narrow range candles. Therefore, what I'll recommend here is for you to stick to daily time frame only. The way you have to execute this is to use daily time frame to identify narrow range clusters and then use lower time frames to trade on an intraday basis. Now, I have discussed pullback method, opening range breakout method, and VWAP indicator strategy, and each can be used with these narrow range candles. In the subsequent sections, I will be showing you how to combine VWAP indicator and narrow range clusters together. In this section, let us now discuss how to identify narrow range clusters correctly. To identify a valid narrow range cluster, make sure you have at least 4 to 5 narrow range candles among the last 9 candles at least. This would represent sustained volatility contraction and would ensure expansion in days ahead. In this chart, first narrow range cluster is in this region wherein there are 5 narrow range candles among the last 10 candles that you spot. Second valid narrow range cluster is in this region that I've marked, and similarly third valid cluster is in this region. The one common thing that you can spot right away is the amount of wide range candles post the clusters that are clearly visible on the chart. This is what is required in intraday trading as we are playing for range expansion in the direction of price move. I hope this aspect is clear. Let us look at one more example to identify narrow range clusters correctly. In this chart, there are 2 regions that qualify as a valid narrow range cluster. These regions are marked here and at this particular point. Now, these are the 2 regions where there are 4 narrow range candles that are visible among the last 7 to 9 candles on the chart. I haven't included these 2 regions here as there are only 2 and 3 narrow range candles in this section. If you look at the valid clusters, plenty of wide range candles consistently show up after the cluster is formed. I have marked the same in this region, and do take a note of this region here. Now, this is a common occurrence and this keeps repeating on a consistent basis. Now, as an intraday trader, you have to look out for such clusters on a daily basis. Do remember to spot this on a daily time frame chart and do not scan for same on a lower time frame chart. Now, while identifying narrow range cluster is important, it is equally important to identify stocks where you need to spot such clusters. As a rule of thumb, select only those stocks that are high beta in nature. The main reason for this is that you want stocks that are high beta in nature but undergo a period of volatility contraction. Once this phase gets over, stock would then expand due to being high volatile stock by nature. I hope this aspect is clear. Now, when you apply this concept on a low beta stock, the expansion phase may not bring about same degree of expansion as witnessed in a high beta stock. You need to also ensure that volume expansion in stock is clearly evident in recent times. This would actually signal presence of strong players in the market, and again, this is an essential element in intraday trading. If you remember, this is a concept I have covered in the stock selection video in great detail. Link to that video would come up at top right hand of your screen. Let me now discuss narrow range as a stock selection criteria. Now, stock selection is one topic where many beginners struggle in intraday trading. If you're confused about stock selection, then look no further than narrow range clusters for the same. I have also done a detailed video on this, and do watch that video. Now, as an intraday trader, focus on those stocks that are forming clear narrow range clusters. You might not get trading opportunity the following day, but within the next 2 to 3 sessions, stock will definitely move. In this chart, if you see, I would select this stock for intraday trading once the cluster here gets confirmed. Once this happens, look at how many wide range candles get plotted over the next few days. Now, this is the kind of opportunity that you should focus upon, as these are the kind of stocks that usually move on intraday basis. So let us now begin with the section where we will combine narrow range clusters and VWAP indicator together. Before we get started, I'll recommend for you to watch the next 3 to 5 minutes at least 2 to 3 times to understand this better. This chart that you see is the daily time frame chart of Reliance Industries. In the last 5 months, if you see, there are 2 narrow range clusters that are clearly visible. These clusters were formed between June 5th and July 8th. We will be taking this cluster into consideration as this has marginally underperformed when you compare with cluster formation here and the subsequent price movement. If you can profit from this cluster, then profiting from this cluster gets more easy, which is why I have chosen this complex case. So let us now see how to use this with VWAP indicator. Now, in order to trade the narrow range cluster, I will show you the application of MVWAP and VWAP indicator with this. Now, I had covered VWAP indicator and MVWAP as an intraday strategy in a separate video. In case you have missed the same, link to it will come up at top right hand of your screen. Now, based on the previous chart, narrow range cluster got completed on 16th June. Let us now see what price did post that. On this chart, I have marked out normal candlesticks, VWAP indicator, and moving average of VWAP indicator. Since we have had a narrow range cluster on the chart, stock is now ready to move either up or down. Now, do note that based on my research, whenever a narrow range cluster shows up, stock typically starts moving within 1 to 2 sessions. But this can be delayed at times, and you should wait for stock movement for at least 3 to 4 days. In this chart, breakdown of price comes about at this region where VWAP was clearly below the MVWAP. Now, there is no prior support visible here, and price does move lower with momentum. If you looked at June 17th and June 18th price action along with June 19th price action, there were clear VWAP short trades there to be taken based on the method that we discussed in the VWAP indicator video. Do note that once the narrow range cluster is in place, it is only a matter of time before price starts moving. Therefore, by applying the concepts of VWAP indicator, once the clusters are formed, you can benefit a great deal, and more importantly, you can know when to focus on which stock. Now let us look at one more example here. In this chart, narrow range cluster is visible in this region. Out of the last 9 candles that you see, there are 5 candles that are narrow in range. There was also a narrow range cluster in this region where out of 10 candles, there were 4 candles that qualified as a cluster. Even post this cluster, there were clear wide range candles that showed up on the chart. If you look at this cluster, again look at how many wide range candles show up subsequently over the next few sessions. Now this is what you need to focus upon. One problem that you will face is how to mark out clusters correctly. Now do note that marking out clusters is a new concept for you, and be patient with this. As you practice and see more charts, you will get the knack of marking out clusters correctly. At the early stages, it is important for you to start taking notes whenever you identify clusters on the chart. This is the only way you will get better at this. So the cluster that we will be studying in this example would be this cluster marked here, because this is a more complicated case than when you compare it with this cluster. So let us now see how price moved post this and how one should approach such clusters. In this chart, we are again using combination of VWAP indicator and MVWAP to capitalize on narrow range clusters. On June 8th, if you see, price gapped lower by 100 points below the near-term support level. With this gap, VWAP indicator moved below the MVWAP level. Price then moved lower with momentum as there was no near-term support visible on the chart. And there was clear momentum visible on the downside, and participation was also strong as wide range candles consistently showed up. This is again a case on how cluster of narrow range candlesticks can be used in combination with VWAP indicator to gain huge edge in the market. Now do watch out for volume activity as well. When price moves in the direction of breakout, volume expansion should be clearly visible. Similarly, when price is consolidating post breakout, volume activity should be subdued. This actually reflects lack of participation in the market, and this is how it should be. Do keep in mind that whether it is MVWAP and VWAP or any other intraday trading strategy, all these can be combined with narrow range clusters. The reason why I have chosen VWAP indicator for this series is because of its simplicity and effectiveness in intraday trading. Let us now take up the same chart and take this cluster into consideration. Do note that when you compare this cluster with the one present here, clearly this cluster is more strong due to the presence of more narrow range candlesticks in this cluster. You can also use cluster strength to shortlist more stocks. Now let's assume you have two stocks into consideration. One has a narrow range cluster of 3 candles and another stock has a narrow range cluster of 4 candles. Always give the second stock more preference because clearly that is the stock that has the strongest cluster. I hope this point is clear. In this chart, based on the opening range breakout strategy, short trade was there to be taken in this instrument. Refer to the opening range breakout video to recollect the rules that we had discussed over there. Do recollect here that narrow range cluster is in place, which meant price was in a period of volatility expansion. Once price is in the period of volatility expansion, you should then start looking for opportunities to go long or short on an intraday basis. Price here moved lower below this support level. This happened with price breaching the opening range on the downside. Once this happened, look at the volume when price had a breakdown and then look at subsequent volumes that showed up. If you also look at the wide range candles here, these clearly represent strong momentum on the downside. I hope now you can see how effective narrow range candlesticks are when it comes to intraday trading. Let me now explain the use of scanners in this intraday trading strategy. Scanners do help in narrowing down the watch list very quickly, and you can use the same for tradingview.com. As far as I am concerned, I still prefer scanning all the charts manually. This just gives me the overall feel of price structure, and hence I prefer this method. Code for narrow range cluster is given in the comment section below, and if you use ME Broker software, I will provide the code for the same as well. For scanning, I have code for ME Broker, and in case you need it, then let me know in the comment section below. Do watch the previous 2 videos on VWAP Indicator, as I have covered many concepts in great depth. Link to all these parts will come up at top right end of your screen. In the meantime, if there is any doubt related to any topic, then let me know in the comment section below, no matter how basic your doubt is. So kindly consider hitting the like button and sharing this video if you find it useful. Thanks a lot for watching this video, guys. Take care and be safe.